Welcome to another cross-training tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about homework formatting guidelines, or more specifically, how can we customize our engineering paper template that we created from the last step to be very specific to a course. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to be using the mechanical engineering course called Thermodynamics at Kansas State University, taught by Dr. Kevin Wanklin. And I'm going to use his homework formatting policies or guidelines to guide us in the template making, in customizing our template for this specific course. So what I have here is an example homework that he has posted on his Canvas course and how he distributes out his points. I also have open kind of on an off screen the homework format guidelines. So I'm just going to briefly just talk about them just really quickly. I'm not going to go into them a lot of detail, so you should definitely open that document and take a look for yourself. So the first major item he has is, why is there a required homework format? So he indicates effective written communication of calculations and problem solutions is one of the most important skills a novice engineer must master. So we're going to keep that in mind as we develop our homework template customized towards this course. The second one we're going to keep in mind is many companies have their own required formatting for engineering work. And then difficulty finding a solution implementing the homework format might help you organize your thoughts so that you can be successful on an exam. And what that basically means is if you're on an exam and you find that you're stuck, and that does happen sometimes. So with me personally, I found it rather easier, not really easier, but kind of a way to help me get out of that blocking point by working through the homework format. And then after just, basically setting up the problem, I'm able to see a pattern and see exactly what I need to do there just by looking at the given information. And then he also has some general appearance and identification kind of guidelines. The first one, and a lot of these are kind of like common sense, so I'm just going to run through it anyway, just so we can keep all of this in mind. The first one is engineering paper is required. Obviously, we're in an engineering degree, so we should be using engineering paper. All paper must be of the same size, ruling, and color. And basically what they're saying is that your engineering paper needs to be consistent. You don't need to have one that's half size and one that's full size or anything weird like that. Do not write on the back side of the paper. Assignments must be stapled. So again, you see this little line over here in the upper left corner. That's where the staple is going to go. Start each problem on a new page. So for example, we see with this example problem on the page 2, it ended about halfway. Well, we don't start the new problem on this page, even though there's like half a page of waste here. And we're going to do the same thing with the digital homework. We're going to follow this exact formatting guideline. Obviously, you don't want to fold your engineering paper or roll it up or do anything weird with your paper. Just put it in a binder, and then if you have to do paper submission, bring it to class nice, clean and neat and flat. Some other guidelines that he has here are more writing issues orientated, and we'll focus on that too as well as we customize our template for this course. And that is to clearly show your analysis, results, conclusion, and recommendations. Your homework should be legible and neat. There should be sufficient darkness and size. And what he's saying when he says darkness, what he really means is contrast. So your writing here shouldn't blend in with the background where it becomes difficult to tell which is which. And that your homework lettering should be large enough where it's readable. The homework grader shouldn't have to get a magnifying glass to find what they're looking for. Then he has a few other things here where you want to try to use a straight edge when making straight lines, having like a little drawing template for doing circles, squares, and things like that. He likes the results boxed in, And then he wants the final answer kind of in a statement form. So we can kind of see that a little bit here where it's in a sentence. It's missing a period, but it doesn't say sentence. It just says statement form. And then he wants that solution boxed in. So again, I'm not going to go through each and every single detail of the homework formatting guidelines. That's for you to do on your own when you take this course. I'm just pulling out certain significant things that's going to apply towards customizing our engineering paper template for this ME 513 Thermodynamics 1 course. So over here on the right side of my screen, I have Photoshop opened again, and on the left side I have an example homework that I have opened here. So we can see across the top we have certain elements going on, and we're going to need this on pretty much every single page of our homework. So we'll need the course title, the date, the homework number, our name, and then there's also this number that happens at the end of the name, and this is to indicate this is again very course specific. This is your thermo number. She'll have a number and then the contract that you chose for this course, and then the current page number over the total page numbers. So let's just work with this because we know that we need this on every single page of our homework. So going into our Photoshop document here, into our templates folder, I'm just going to start cranking out some layers here. Just clicking the new layer button. Maybe I'll start out with 5 new layers. So the very first one needs to be the course name. So I'm going to rename this layer to course name. And to rename a layer, all I'm doing is it's the same way that you rename a file or a folder. You just kind of double click on it, and then it goes into this rename mode. So this one's going to be due date. The next one is going to be homework number. So I'll just do HW_num for homework number. And then the next one is, of course, name. This is your name, not the professor's name. The next one on top of that, I'm going to call it thermo number. And then we need total page numbers. So I'm just making a new layer. I'm going to call it total page number. And then we have this little slash that's happening in between the 1 and the 2. So I like to call it of, because if you read that, it basically says 1 of 2 or page 1 of 2. So I'll just call it of. You can rename it to anything that you want. So again, here we go. We have course number, due date, homework number, name, thermo number, total page number, and of, and we need that on pretty much every single page of our homework. So now I'm going to go ahead and collapse that, and I'm going to make a new group, and it's going to be on top of my other group, and this is going to be where I'm going to make a problem template, or I'm going to call this template problem. So basically what every single homework problem needs to have. Now, homework problems can spill off onto more than one page, so I will also kind of keep that in mind as I do this. So again, I'm going to make some new layers. I'm going to make a whole bunch of new layers in here. Maybe I'll make like 9 new layers or something. So the layer 1, the very first one down here at the bottom, I'm going to make this current page number, or I'll just call it page number. I also like to have one here called problem number, because remember again, we will practice more homework thermo problems than what's given in the homework, and I like to sometimes, instead of having the number 1 up here, I have the actual problem number, and I actually have a 3-ring binder that has all of pretty much every single homework problem in the book that we worked, each chapter that we studied in there. So for homework submission purposes, I do this page number, and then for personal binder keeping, I do this problem number. And then you can turn one off and off as you need to submit or print things out or export or whatever. So the next one, I'm going to call it problem. So this is the actual problem. That's going to be this part right here where it says 4.9, and then all of this text that happens that's worth 2 points, or the restate problems section. So I'm just calling it problem. You can call it restate problem section, but generally we're talking about this area right here. The next one is going to make reference to, basically, I'm going to call it the visualization, the data visualization section. So I'm calling it that because we usually have some sort of sketch. So right here we have a sketch. Sometimes you'll have a graph that has an XY axis, and it may be something like a PV diagram or a PT sort of graph. And then we usually have like a table. So down here towards the bottom, there's a table. And pretty much in all of my homework problems and problems that I work, I always have a table. For me personally, I found the table extremely helpful. That's just how I like to see information. Everybody is different. Maybe visualizing it this way works better for you than visualizing it this way down here. Again, this is more personal preference, but you do need to have a data visualization section. So we'll just stop there for now, and we have this problem area and we have this data visualization area. So going back to my Photoshop template, and I like to call them steps, but they're not really steps. So I'm going to call it step 1A. I'm going to call it diagram. I'm going to call this one step 1B. Again, they're not really steps. It's more, I guess I should really call it like area 1A, area 1B. But again, this is more personal preference, whichever you prefer. So this one's going to be my graphs, if I have any graphs. Step 1C, tables. So again, these don't necessarily represent steps, they're just areas, and you'll find that you'll go back and forth, and solving thermal problems, it doesn't start with 1 and then go to B and then go to C. It doesn't really work that way. You're going to find that you're going to jump back and forth a lot. All right, let's look at the next area, and that's this 2-pointer right here where it says assume. In the textbook, they call it the engineering model. So we're going to group up the engineering model and the assume section all together. So here where it says layer 7, I'm going to call this step 2. ENG model, you can do a / assumptions. And maybe I'll make this a little bit wider so we can see a little bit better. The next layer is going to be this analysis section. So notice that he groups the table as part of his analysis section. And you can put yours in your analysis section too if you want. Again, it's more personal preference. So in my analysis area, this is where we start stating the equation. And then we plug in the numbers into the equation, do the necessary conversions, and then we have a solution. Sometimes you may want to underline your solutions so that you can quickly find these little... these aren't like end solutions, these are more like intermediate solutions, so you can underline intermediate solutions. And then we did all of this work here basically to get this value right here. So this area is called the analysis. And again, I just want to emphasize that it's not a linear thing. You don't start at step 1 and go to step 3. Sometimes you may find you have to start over here at analysis before you can do anything else, depending upon the problem or what's given to you. So it spills over to page 2. Sometimes if it spills over to page 2, what you may end up doing is just end up creating another new layer and call this one analysis 1 and the new layer analysis 2. But for now, we're just going to leave it as a single analysis. Because remember, this is just our generic template that we're making for this particular course, that we're customizing for this course. Finally, we have the solution. And we notice that it's worth 2 points as well. All right, so let's take a look at what we have so far. So we have our template, which kind of represents what needs to happen on every single page. And then we have our template problem, which represents what we need to have with each and every single homework problem. The next thing I need to do is actually populate my layers with some data. All right, so I'm going to use the paint tool over here. So I'm going to make sure I have the paint tool activated. And I'm probably going to zoom in to a certain level that feels like writing comfortability to me. So maybe at this scale right here. And now I'm going to switch to the paint tool. And up here at the top are my paint tool settings. These are all the options for that particular tool. And this one here allows me to pick the size. So I'm going to start with a 2. Maybe I want to use a 3 or a 4. I don't know yet. You don't want to go anything smaller than a 2. And then I want to make sure that I choose a brush that's going to have a very sharp edge, because again, we want that contrast that was mentioned in the homework format guidelines. Now I'm going to expand my template, and I know that one of the first things I need to put in here is my course name, and it needs to hop in up here in this area, but I'm actually not going to write it up there because I want to have some guidelines here to help me, write it straight. So this is going to be, so notice when I write nothing happens, and that's because I have right now selected white as my color. So I'm going to click on that so that it opens the color picker, and I'm going to choose black and then click OK. So up here at the top, I'm going to write M. E for mechanical engineering. 5, 1, 3. And you're probably wondering how I got that stem on the M so straight. You can also press the shift key and draw. So if you press the shift key and go horizontally, oops. Control Z will undo something that you've done. So if I press the shift key and draw horizontally, it'll draw it perfectly horizontal. If I flip my stylus over to the other side, I can erase. I can also do a straight erase too using the shift and just dragging. And I can do it also vertically. So let me do thermo. And if you're new to writing with a stylus, the first time you do it, it might be a little bit slow. But after about a couple weeks of doing it, you'll get pretty fast. So thermodynamics 1. And I've written it down here in this bottom area because I wanted to use the grid to help me, kind of guide in writing it straight. But now I can put it up here. So I've activated the move tool, and I'm just going to drag it up here. And I'm allowed to do that because recall that every layer is transparent. So now I'm going to go to the due date and do the exact same thing. So I've activated the due date layer. So I'm just going to write due date. And the rest of that information I'll write out as I work each homework problem. But for now, this is just a generic, course-specific, customized template. Alright, so now let me do homework number. And I'll drag it on top of the due date. Oops, notice how I wrote them both on the same layer accidentally? And I actually want my homework number on its own separate layer. Well, I can actually move this off this layer by using this select tool and select the thing I want to move off, which is this homework number. And then type Control X on the keyboard, which will cut it. And if I do a Control V, that should paste it. Now going into my layers list, I want it to be on this homework number layer. So all I have to do is press the shift key, select homework number in layer 1, and I can right click and I can do a merge. Now before I merge, I want to mention that if layer 1 was on top of homework num, when it merges, it will rename everything to layer 1. So I actually want it to maintain this homework num name. So that's why I want to make sure that homework num is on top, which it is in this case. So I'll go ahead and right click and choose merge layers. That merges them two together and it keeps the top layer's name. Now I can move this homework 1. Whoops, I still have the select tool selected. So if you still have the select tool selected and you don't accidentally select it somewhere and you don't want that selection thing there anymore, you can go to the select drop down and just choose deselect. So now I'll choose the select tool again, move homework number up here, and do the next one. And the next one is basically my name. So I'm just going to write my name here. So this would be your name. That goes in here and not my name or the professor's name. And then I'll move that over to here. And let's see. I have my thermo number. So my thermo number happens to be this. And then my contract number, which was this. Now I can move that next to there. Now if I want this to be more on center, I don't want to have to drag, each one by one because I just got it perfectly lined up vertically. You can go back into your layers list using the shift key, select the layers that you want to move simultaneously, and then come back into the canvas space and just drag it. So now I can move both of these layers at the same time. So now I want to do total page numbers and of. And what I actually want to do is have a little box in here that contains my page numbers. It's just more of a personal preference thing. You don't have to. So over here on the left side toolbar, I want to draw a perfect box. So I'm going to look for the geometry drawing tool area. So that's this one here. If I press and hold down the button, notice it expands out to other things that you can draw. So I just need the rectangle tool. And over here, I'm going to draw a rectangle, maybe about that big seems reasonable. Again, recall we don't want it too close to the edge or too close to the top because if I do have to print this, it may cut it off. And again, I can use the move tool and drag this into position. So I want it a little bit more closely towards the left. Now over here in my layers list, notice it says rectangle 1. And it's actually a solid fill and I don't want it to be a solid fill. So I'm going to go ahead and double click so that it will open the layer styles. And I'm going to click on the word styles itself up here, and I just need it to be a box with a hollow inside, so I'll click on that. And then I can go to the stroke options and change the thickness of the box, and I can also set a transparency to it. So a default setting of 1 is fine for me. I'll go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to go back to my total page numbers layer and go back to my paint tool. And since I chose contract B, which only has 2 homework problems, I'm going to choose the number 2. And it is possible that one of my homework problems could spill off to 2 or 3 pages. And if that's the case, then I may have to go back in here and change this to 3 or 4. But I found after the course of a semester that pretty much I was able to contain things to 2 pages using this homework template. So now I'm going to write the word of. So I've selected the of layer. So let's write the word of, or you can use a slash, whichever one that you prefer. And then the current page number, I'm going to leave blank because remember that's problem specific. So let's take a look at what we have thus far. We've got our course number here, thermodynamics, due date, homework number, and we have our name. I'm going to go ahead and save this as an ME 513 specific engineering paper template in my practice problems folder.